Welcome to the garden. In this video, I'm going to give the first ever tour of what my wife and I are calling our Holy Buckets garden. You'll see why in just a second. Hey, my name is Mike Behrens, and I started gardening in the summer of 2023 so that I could learn to grow food to feed my family in the simplest, most budget-friendly way possible. And on this channel, I share my experiences and tips and tricks that I'm learning along the way. So let's talk about the first ever garden tour of the Holy Buckets garden and talk about why we call it Holy Buckets. As you can see, there's a few buckets here. All told, there's 38 buckets in this garden right now. The main purpose of the buckets is for critter control so that we can make sure that we keep the bunny rabbits out of eating the plants and getting all the leaves and killing the plants before they get started growing. Another thing that I did this year with the buckets is the soil quality is a clay soil. And I wanted to improve that as much as I could, but I also didn't want to spend a ton of money by bringing in a bunch of dirt for the whole garden. So what I did was, where every single spot you see a bucket, I dug down about 6 to 10 inches and filled that with good quality soil so that the plants had plenty of space to grow down in the roots and actually have some good quality soil to grow into, make it a little easier on the plants. And then over time, we'll just continue to improve the soil by digging in every spot that gets a bucket. And I think the buckets just look nice. It's a nice aesthetic. I like sitting in my house and looking at the garden and seeing what it looks like with all the buckets out there. It gives it some structure. It's a nice way to add some design elements to the garden, but not being over the top while also functional. All right, so that's enough about the buckets. Let's get into the garden tour. So let's start with a full view of the garden. Across the front, it is about 30 feet across, and then from the front right corner to the back corner is about 45 feet. So first thing we got growing in the garden right now is some onions. We got a bed of onions here. It definitely needs to be weeded. I just haven't had any time to come out and pick some weeds, but the onions are doing great. They look really good right now. Got two types of onions in here. The front half is yellow onions and the back half is red onions. And I just watered everything this morning, so that's why the soil looks different. Right now, the yellow onions are doing a lot better than the red onions. They look a lot fuller. They were planted on exactly the same day. Just seems to be that the yellow ones are doing a lot better than the red ones right now. So in our first row of buckets, we have cabbage. There's 8 head of cabbage here. One that is not doing so hot. This guy right here is trying to die on me. I'm trying to replant him and bring him back to life, but I don't think he's gonna make it. And we got a few more that look pretty good right now. We eat a lot of cabbage here. My wife makes this cabbage carrot thing that is super, super good. So I wanted to grow quite a bit of cabbage. Last year we only had 3 head of cabbage, and so this year it was nice to get a few more. And I plan to plant more as the season progresses, and hopefully we can get another harvest of cabbage out of this year. Okay, in the next row of buckets, I got a few things. So the first 2 are purple broccoli. Then in the next 2, I have some green broccoli. And then the next 2 after that are some cauliflower. And then the last 2 buckets are jalapenos that look to be doing okay. So this year in the garden, my plan was to experiment and see what would grow. Last year I did very, very minimal things, but this year I wanted to expand that and be able to grow some more stuff. So that's why I don't have a ton of any one single plant in that row of buckets. Then next we have a row of potatoes here with our rooster keeping guard at the front. We got a whole row of potatoes that we planted, probably about a month ago now, and they are doing pretty well. I had one that had not come up yet, but it just came up 2 days ago. And then I had another one over here that hadn't come up that came up about 3 days ago. So every potato that we planted has come up so far, and they're looking pretty good. So then next to the potatoes is going to be some cucumbers and zucchini, this whole area right here. And then we have our strawberry beds. And this part has been pretty frustrating for me so far because I planted 2 beds of strawberries, 25 plants in each, and there's like 3 growing right now. I think it's either a couple things. The bunny rabbits got to it, or planted them a day or 2 before the last frost that we had. And so I'm wondering if maybe that killed my strawberries. And then the other thing is maybe they just sat too long when I ordered them. I ordered them from a website and they sat in the box before I could get to them. So I wonder if they sat too long, and it's super annoying. So I'm gonna have to get some more. That right there is the only strawberry we have growing in the first bed of strawberries. In the second bed, we have this guy right here, and we have this guy right here. That's it. So out of 50 plants, there's 3 strawberries growing. Oh, wait a minute. There's one more right there. So we got 4 out of 50 that actually worked. So now in the back corner of the garden, we planted some raspberry bushes. There's 2 raspberry bushes here, and I used some grass clippings as a little bit of mulch over the top to keep some of the moisture in. This one is not really doing too hot just yet, but this one back here popped off a little stem, some little growth, and it's got some leaves just the other day. So now along the whole back of the garden, we have it lined with buckets of tomatoes. There's 16 buckets here that have tomatoes in them with a bunch of different varieties. So the first 4 buckets are delicious tomatoes. Actually, we have one started right here. The kids found that the other day. We were out here looking at them. And then next to the delicious tomatoes, we have Roma tomatoes. There's 4 Roma tomatoes that are here. Then next to the Roma tomatoes, I actually have one variety that I'm not exactly sure what it is. I haven't asked my dad yet because I got the plant from him. The next to that is a honeycomb cherry tomato plant that I had. I had 2 of them, but one of them broke off, so I've got one of those. Now we have a super sweet cherry tomato, 2 of those. Then we have a cherry baby, 2 of those, and then a black cherry, 2 black cherry tomato plants. So now you're probably thinking that's a lot of cherry tomatoes. Well, my family, my wife and my oldest daughter specifically, eat cherry tomatoes like they're candy. So I wanted to grow a bunch of different varieties to see which ones they like best and make sure that we had plenty. Then next to the cherry tomatoes, I have a bunch of sweet peppers. The first 3 are a Carnival blend variety, and then I just have a California blend variety for the last 3. So that's what I have growing in the garden right now, and obviously there is plenty of empty space in the garden, and I'm gonna get the rest of everything else planted this coming week. It's mid-May right now, and so it's time to get everything in the garden. I'm a little bit behind where I wanted to be, but let's talk about what I'm going to be putting in this week. So first thing is right here next to the onions. This is going to be a row of root vegetables, so like beets and radishes and carrots and things like that, possibly some greens, maybe some spinach. Over here will be some cantaloupe. We want to try to grow some fruit, and so we've got some cantaloupe started. Then here, my middle daughter is super pumped about some watermelon that we're going to put right here. In this section back here, I'm going to start some artichokes. I just realized that artichokes take a full year before you can get some fruit from them, so we'll get them started and get them ready to go. Then here, I'm going to put some green beans. I have a purple green bean that's going to get started there. And then I'm also going to plant some green beans in here. And then I got a few other things. I'm going to try some celery somewhere. Then I have some squash that I want to do as well. And all of that will just kind of fill in this area back here. So you see some random pieces of wood laying around in the garden. That's just an old pallet that I had to try to square things up and make it look a little bit nicer. I don't know if I'm going to keep them or if I'm going to take them down. I'm looking for some more pallets to try to get to maybe dress up the whole garden that way. But they're not really serving much of a purpose right now other than being just a border for the different beds. So now before we wrap this up, there's one more spot that I gotta show you that I just decided on a whim last weekend to put some plants in. And that's this spot right here, my ring of onions, or an onion ring, if you will. So this was a fire pit that was here from when we moved into the house that we haven't used. So just last weekend I decided, you know what, let's use it. Let's plant something in here. And I had some onion starts that I had started from seed. So I decided to go ahead and put them in the onion ring and see how they would grow. All right, so that's it for the first ever tour of the Holy Buckets backyard garden for mid-May of 2024. Stay tuned to the channel so that I can share more experiences and what I learn as I try to become a gardener. I'll see you in the next video. You might hear some background noise of a saw or some hammering because my neighbor is getting a deck put in, and it seems like every time I start talking, they start sawing.